As the weight of the corona outbreak lightens in Iran, businesses and religious sites are reopening. But that's just in the white zones. The smart reopening plan unveiled by the president end April divides the country by the colors white, yellow and red, with the seriousness of infection increasing in that order. 60 cities remain epidemic red zones, and even white zones are being reopened with a watchful eye. The capital, Tehran, has begun a downward trend in infected cases, but there is still work to be done on all fronts. After irritating but no doubt necessary security checks by nice people, I got to land in this beautiful big hall where the tomb of Imam Khomeini lies. It is impressive the number of boxes that have gotten to fill up this big hall. Boxes of first aid and basic foodstuffs for the low income in the battle against the COVID-19 pandemic. But generally, compared to other countries, how well is Iran doing in this battle? For answers, stay with me, Leila Faramarzi, on Iran Today. Given we are up against an enemy of all humanity, it's a fight for the nation as well as the government. And zones classed as yellow or almost white have observed more than 80% of the health protocols. That's protocols put in place by authorities and observed by the people. Just as the food and health baskets, well, boxes seen above, were donated by people who were rallied by the armed forces. Mr. Haydarnia is an IRGC colonel taking care of the media looking in on the maneuver.
Today, the second stage of the campaign named Sympathy, Empathy and Pious Aid by the Tehran Province branch of the Islamic Revolution Guards Corps started at the mausoleum of the late founder of the Islamic Republic, Imam Khomeini, who was a sympathizer of the poor. Today, at this mausoleum, we prepared 14,000 supporting packages to be distributed among Iranian families whose life has been harmed in recent months due to the coronavirus outbreak. In addition to this place, all across Tehran province cities, with the help of all relevant authorities and bodies, the IRGC, the Basij, benefactors and other people devoted to the Islamic establishment, we will be distributing over 110,000 such packages across Tehran province.
I asked for how long the efforts could be kept up to refill essential goods baskets and keep up efforts similar to this maneuver. After all, the country is still mostly yellow, and it could still experience a resurgence of the illness. 2 new waves actually, with the country reopening, and with autumn and its basket full of influenza on its way.
We embarked on the first stage at the start of the holy month of Ramadan, which drew positive reaction. People were very happy and grateful. You must know that after the leader of the Islamic Revolution ordered providing aid to such vulnerable groups, a great movement was born out of our people in the country, and we have so far managed to undertake effective measures. Such aid may have a palliative effect and not be permanent. But most certainly, once this ominous virus has been eradicated, our people will return to their normal life, and they would be able to deal with their own problems. As long as this problem exists, we promise our people that their servants at the IRGC and Basij will stand with them. With the help of benefactors, we would be able to resolve their problems for now.
Even before the color categorization, since 12th April actually, the country started relaxing lockdown measures. And some factories, businesses, malls and parks were reopened. But reopening does not mean going back to normal. Deputy Health Minister Harirchi said, "We will not allow public gatherings of several hundred or several thousand people until we can evaluate the effect of the rollbacks." It's the Interior Ministry that has to bring all efforts into unison if to hold the country together. Mr. Qasemi is member of its COVID committee overseeing the implementation of preventative protocol among the country's immigrant as well as native community. Referring to the reopening scheme, reopening the country in stages, how efficient would you say it has been or can be given the combination of factors involved, for example, public participation and cooperation?
در مورد رفع محدودیت خب شما
As far as restrictions are concerned, except for the economic sector, where our economic resilience has been affected by sanctions, in other sectors we are seeing cooperation. For instance, schools are the first place to close and will be the last place to reopen. The same goes for universities, except for the PhD level, where students are few, and therefore it would be possible to respect social distancing rules in classrooms. Or we have seen cooperation in mausoleums and holy shrines as the policies forecast in March continue.
116 of the 436 Iranian cities and towns with a total population of at least 15 million have been tagged white. But 60 cities, including most provincial capitals, are still in the critical red category. In fact, several popular tourism areas such as Isfahan, Gilan and Qom, the recognized epicenter of the outbreak, are already facing another wave of infection. Yet Iran is doing okay overall.
شما اگر بخواید از منظر حکمرانی در بحث مدیریت بیماری کرونا
If you want to assess Iran's management of the coronavirus disease, it has been significantly successful compared with many other nations. One such aspect was the sacrificial and self-motivated actions by various groups of people, NGOs, charities, and foundations. You must have seen that our people did not rush to shopping centers over this time, unlike other countries where tragic incidents happened. This is partly attributed to our people's religious beliefs and partly to the history and civilization of this land. Such things were unique in our country. There were cases where many people came and donated their assets for helping others.
It's a good thing the medical front is holding it together, because all hopes of the coronavirus dying with the dry heat of midsummer in terrains such as Tehran have been shattered. That's looking at Hormozgan province in the south, where the temperature has centered on 36 degrees Celsius, that's 97 degrees Fahrenheit, and yet there's been an increase in infected cases. The hotter provinces in the south seem to be Iran's safe zones, but oil-rich Khuzestan has also taken the country by surprise. Mr. Mardani is executive director of one of the best hospitals, the country's first private Mehr hospital.
ببینید اگه شما آمارا رو نگاه بکنید در
If you look at the data, you will see the infection rate in Khuzestan province was low in March and April. A student of mine holds a key post at the medical school there. During the New Year holidays, he contacted me to invite me there, saying the weather was perfect and there was no coronavirus. I told him it was not time for us to relax. He said there were few cases of COVID-19 there. What happened then? Residents of Khuzestan were not exposed to the virus. This virus belongs to the group of viruses looking for hosts who have not yet developed any antibodies. It doesn't make any distinction between black or white, old or young, rich or poor.
Iran's infection curve may have flattened, but as it remains fragile, the country is still testing and seeking cures, and getting together all the arms it can.
سخنگوی وزارت بهداشت میاد میگه آقا جون تا تاریخ
The health ministry spokesman offers statistical data about the number of suspected patients and others who have referred to hospitals for COVID-19 diagnosis tests. But the figures he provides about the number of infected people is not for the entire country. The health ministry spokesman is not lying. He only speaks about the number of positive cases amongst those who have referred to hospitals. That's true, but it doesn't mean we have no case other than the spokesman says. Many refuse to go to hospitals. Some even say they would prefer to stay home even if they fall ill. Some people may not have access to diagnosis tests, particularly at the beginning of the epidemic in Iran.
Iran has launched the world's largest plasma therapy project, according to Deputy Health Minister Jahanpur, by transferring antibody-rich blood into COVID-19 patients. To attack the novel coronavirus COVID-19, the immune system creates antibodies. Once these build up over time, they can be found in the plasma. That's the liquid part of the blood. It's this antibody-rich plasma that has been infused into patients to increase their immunity. The study began with a group of 60 patients and then another 150. Should this produce expected results on a large scale, it would be the dream method of treatment as it is inexpensive. Mr. Abdullah, he is a corona-centered IRGC hospital chief. We are talking Baghiatullah Hospital. I asked for the latest on kits and ventilators.
تو زمینه ونتیلاتور خب ما تا
As far as ventilators are concerned, we were dependent on imports until recently. We had to import most of our ventilators, venting equipment, anesthesiology equipment. Thanks to God and following instruction by the leader to turn threats into opportunities, several knowledge-based companies relying on homegrown, know-how developed Iranian-made ventilators. Today, we are at a point we no longer need to import foreign ventilator, but we are also able to export ventilators to foreign countries that may need.
Time for a short break. We'll be back in no time. I asked for examples of how social distancing was enforced to prevent a further spread of infection, be it by directive or punishment.
ما اینجا فعالیت‌های اقتصادیمون تو پاساژها
Our activity in shopping centers is bound by time restrictions in a bid to dissuade families from touring such centers in the afternoon. The trade unions flouting instructions will receive warning at first place, but after a second infraction, they will be sealed for 1 month, which is the highest penalty for them. Regarding public transportation, people have been asked to wear masks and have protective equipment on them when they take the train or the bus. The municipalities have also relaxed congestion zones regulations. If you see heavy traffic in the streets, it's because restrictions have been eased so that people will be able to drive in their own cars to their work and do shopping, and therefore the burden on public transportation will be eased in favor of preventing virus infection.
It's time for a quick break to see what other media outlets have to say. For that, I give you Shahrzad.
Hi, my name is Shahrzad Manucheri, and this is the news section of Iran Today. We'll be looking online for the latest update on Iran and its fight against COVID-19. In an article by Tasnim News Agency, we witness how Iran sends homegrown COVID-19 test kits to Germany and Turkey. Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif said the country has sent 40,000 advanced kits to Germany, Turkey, and other countries to help them in their fight against the deadly coronavirus. Recently, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani issued an order to boost the production of homegrown test kits for the diagnosis of the novel coronavirus in order to pave the way for their export. The president underlined that the homegrown production should satisfy the domestic demands and allow for the export of the kits to the countries needing them. The Atlantic Council reports how the coronavirus is cementing Iran's tilt towards China. The Iran-China bilateral relationship has been gaining strategic significance for more than a decade, and the coronavirus pandemic appears to have solidified this trend. While US President Donald Trump is offering medical supplies while refusing to lift sanctions on financial transactions with Iran, the Chinese are airlifting supplies and medical personnel to Tehran. A recent social media spat revealed how invested some powerful Iranian political groups, as well as some businesses, are in the Tehran-Beijing axis. Despite the US's maximum pressure strategy, Iranian exports and imports to and from China, respectively, totaled close to $20 billion in 2019, comprising roughly 1/5 of all Iranian exports and 1/4 of its imports. Tehran Times investigates how COVID-19 cuts foreign arrivals in Iran by 15.8%, according to UNWTO. Iran has suffered an average 15.8% fall in foreign arrivals during the first 3 months of 2020, compared to the same period last year, according to data released by the United Nations World Tourism Organization that analyzes impact of the COVID-19 on international tourism. The worldwide outbreak of COVID-19 has brought the world to a standstill, and tourism has been the worst affected of all major economic sectors. Against a backdrop of heightened uncertainty, up-to-date and reliable information is more important than ever, both for tourists and tourism sectors. An expected fall of between 20 to 30% could translate into a decline in international tourism receipts. Exports of between $300 to $450 billion, almost one-third of the $1.5 trillion generated in 2019. Tasnim news agency states Iran and Austria stressed global cooperation to tackle COVID-19. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani and his Austrian counterpart stressed the need for an all-out international cooperation to tackle the coronavirus pandemic and expressed readiness to share experiences and deepen cooperation in this regard. In a telephone conversation, Rouhani and Alexander Van der Bellen also described U.S. sanctions against Iran as an obstacle to meeting medical and pharmaceutical needs and expressed opposition to the continuation of sanctions. The Austrian president, for his part, said Austria and the European Union oppose the U.S. sanctions against Iran and will continue their cooperation with Tehran. We are trying to improve relations between Iran and Europe without being influenced by the United States, he said, adding that the U.S. move contradicts international treaties and is against international laws. That's all for this segment. We'll see you next week.
Well as the health community may be doing, Iran's already overstretched medical infrastructure faces a massive potential burden, given U.S. sanctions have not eased in spite of international calls to the contrary. Essential goods, meaning food and medicine, are not officially under sanctions. But for fear of secondary U.S. sanctions, international banks are reluctant to facilitate financial transactions with Iran, and so this country can't pay for medical equipment. Mr. Abdullah is himself a physician and tells of why the country is doing okay thanks to the medical effort, be it empirical studies and drug administration or drug making.
We provide aid and receive aid in the pharmaceutical sector. We both import and export drugs. Some necessary drugs like remdesivir are originally made in East Asia. Japan was the first country to produce remdesivir, followed by China. After clinical tests at Baghiyatullah Hospital, we are making a step towards producing this medication. If we produce enough to meet domestic needs, we would then be able to export to the other countries. One or two knowledge-based companies, not too affiliated with the IRGC, produced COVID-19 test kits, which were exported to Germany and some other countries.
Iran ranks third worldwide in coronavirus research projects, read a Tehran Times article this month. That's because Iranian researchers have so far conducted over 1,200 projects related to coronavirus, said Deputy Health Minister Malekzadeh. The projects are mostly interventional schemes, with 35 schemes seeking suitable treatments for COVID-19.
A lot of work is being done to find a vaccine. The Oxford Group in Britain is the leading group. They have already tested their candidate vaccines on monkeys and they hope to be able to develop it by September. Meanwhile, scientists in the US, Sweden and Australia are also working on the vaccine. Their efforts are likely to come to fruition within 8 to 10 months. It may not be available before the start of the cold season, and that's why we recommend that people respect sanitation and social distancing measures. In Iran too, work is underway at Pasteur Institute and other research centers on the possibility of development of vaccines. Maybe they would be able to develop a vaccine, but until now, no vaccine has been available in the country.
Diagnostic kits are no longer news. Iran was already boasting its manufacture in our last corona episode. The country's latest focus is on test kits that detect coronavirus antibodies, while it continues to place importance on ventilators. Now, who's got the know-how and people for all the research required, and who's got the money for it? The Health Ministry boasted the country's knowledge-based companies for technical know-how and the Health Ministry for supporting them financially by its own resources, as well as the Innovation and Prosperity Fund. Iran was one of the first countries to produce the serology kits, which it is capable of exporting to other countries, he said.
ببینید ما مرگ و میرمون داره رو به کاهش هست.
The mortality rate is on the decline in our country. Hospitalizations are also declining in number. However, our new cases of infection are rising. Why? It's because at the outbreak of the disease, we did not have enough access to diagnosis kits. An Iranian knowledge-based company developed a new test kit that is being used in the country. It may be used only to show the trend of epidemics in the country. Many of such tests have not won approval, even in the US. At the start of the outbreak, 3 to 4 centers in Tehran could conduct RT-PCR tests, but we have now 40 to 80 of them, including private ones, to diagnose the disease. It shows easier access to tests, and that explains why we are witnessing new cases every day.
Now, as half the country is already experiencing a resurgence of the disease, it is evident the predicted second and third waves of COVID-19 were no science fiction. The Food and Drug Administration of Iran stressed the inevitability of the occurrence in autumn, as well as the difficulty of combating it if we were to depend on a vaccine. The making of a vaccine has been ordered by presidential decree, but the virus is complicated by nature and may not respond to orders.
Producing a vaccine generally takes time. The weakened virus is first tested on animals in an animal lab to be able to calculate the amount of antibody produced in the animal's body. Then, permission will be needed for testing it on humans to see how the body would react. It would take 3 to 6 months for this reaction to become known. If any country claims now to have produced a vaccine, it would be just a hypothesis and not a fact.
The World Health Organization, WHO, has acknowledged Iran as one of the 12 countries with viable clinical trials, given its high-level scientific research capabilities, as indicated by Zali, head of the Tehran Coronavirus Control Committee. As we speak, way before an actual vaccine is anywhere to be seen, 80% of the coronavirus positive cases in the country have fully recovered and left hospital, the health ministry stressed. Iranian doctors weren't held back by bureaucracy in administering drugs by trial and error. Seeing themselves at war with an error of nature, they wasted no time in practicing discretion in making emergency decisions, and they seem largely satisfied with results. Talking of emergencies, those can be more than medical, and Iran is faced with a cluster of them, both medical and economic, and all that can result from an economic war which this country is faced with. US sanctions against Iran have been as good as economic siege, and now with the coronavirus pandemic added with all the further challenges that it can bring about, America's illegal act of war, so to speak, is turning into a war crime of the worst order. For expert expanding of the matter, we may revisit the issue in future. For now, before wrapping up the episode, allow me to sketch Iran's at-hand economic horizon. As it is, like all countries at large, Iran is facing foreign as well as domestic travel and trade restrictions. This ancient, wondrous country has seen a 90% drop in revenues of its restaurants, travel agencies and hotels, when they should be experiencing a boom, given we are just a month into Persian New Year beginning 20th March.
تصمیماتی هم که گرفته میشه تصمیمات خوب و بد نیست.
It's not a choice between the good and bad, rather between the bad and the worse. Until the end of the 2-week New Year holidays, we had not received any demand for the reopening of the businesses. You must have seen that trade unions had to suspend their activities due to the coronavirus outbreak, while their peak of activity was in March in the run-up to the New Year. They were cooperative, but after some time, due to their financial obligations and maturity of their checks, the process of distribution of goods had to be resumed. At any stage, some restrictions have been eased for trade unions, while some health obligations have also been envisaged. The trade unions were very cooperative. Nearly 2 million trade unions registered on the government website received health codes for the resumption of their activity. Even now, trade unions and the health ministry experts are monitoring the activity of the trade unions.
The government has handed out no-interest or low-interest loans where it deemed necessary, say to those put out of their jobs by the corona crisis. The living conditions and welfare of an estimated 7.3 million people have become precarious thanks to the crisis. But given the state of the economy caused by sanctions, the government can keep up giving out handouts for only so long. Hence, still white, yellow and red, the country is opening up in stages, mindful of what may yet come. That's it for today. Thanks for watching from the whole team. Do watch again at the same times next week and each week after for updates on Corona and other topics. Don't forget to leave your comments and topic requests. Bye for now.